that Chardonnay.
Nobody else.
And that was, 2017. I'll tell you what, that is pouring magnificent right now. Don't you think, Robbie? I mean, that's.
Oh yeah.
That's
no, it's drinking really nice right now. Yeah.
Really nice. And a lot of it is the steamed barrels. That's unusual, but it gives it a little roundness in the mouthfeel. I like that a lot. Yeah, that works.
Come in a half bottle. Ours is like half full.
Yeah, half full. Yeah. So good job on that one. All right, I'm going to talk about Merlot 2016. In spite of that stupid movie, we love Merlot, and the fact is, even though it killed the market for 10 years, it didn't in the tasting rooms, because in the tasting room you get to taste it, and when you can taste a wine that's this beautiful, I mean, look how pretty that is. There's nothing prettier than that. Look at that. That's magnificent, and this Merlot aged about 18 months in French oak, and it comes from the top 10 rows, right, Robbie? The top 10 of that vineyard.
Oh yeah, sorry, right here.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful spot for growing Merlot. It's got a fabulous nose to it. You taste the plums, the black tea leaf. It's full bodied. There's a lot going on here. Now, do I have some people on here that have that wine open right now? You got any?
Yeah.
Right.
That is so good.
So for the people that maybe haven't been to the winery, there may be some of you that haven't been up to the tasting room. Maybe you haven't done much in the wine tasting. The thing you want to do is you want to swirl that wine in the glass, and then you want to plant it really tight to your nose to get that aroma to flow over the top. And then here's what you want to do, and this is something that your mom and dad told you to stop doing, and it's this. You want to lay it on your tongue and
social distancing, rather, we're drinking.
Oh, I gotta turn on the volume.
a little slurping is good. There's nothing wrong with a little slurping. It opens up the flavors. And Merlot has a beautiful, beautiful bouquet that you really want to feel in that wine. So a little slurping, and then voila, you've got a beautiful, beautiful glass of wine.
Oh,
18 months in about 25% new French oak. Now that's going to be French oak that's toasted, unlike the Clone 17, which was steamed. And that's kind of a new process. It's very interesting, and it did a great job in that Chardonnay. We only have 16 barrels, and one of the things that for the wine club members that are out there, I want you guys to, one thing you really have to make sure that you do, because this is a really small winery with very little production, you want to taste the wines that you're not familiar with when you get them. Because if you want to reorder them, you won't get burned like I did 8 years ago. My son and I, Kevin, he's in the room here tonight. We went to barrel tasting weekend, and we got to Robert Young as our last stop after tasting all day, and they had a barrel of Cabernet Franc, and so we tasted it, and I went, wow, this is really good, and you're buying futures. And so they were going to deliver it in October, and you had to buy. So I'm throwing money at them, and I'm signing up, and boy, sure enough, 6 months later, they call me up. I go to the tasting room, and I go to the manager and go, hey, you know what? Pull 2 cases down, because I'm going to drink on 1 case now, and I'm going to stash the other one. And he said, what wine? And I go, the Cab Franc. Just give me more bottles. You got 6 there. Give me 2 cases. Put them in the box. He goes, you're an idiot. And I go, what do you mean I'm an idiot? He goes, I told you I had 1 barrel. I go, no, you didn't. You never said that. And I went, Oh no, I thought of the date, and we were out drinking all afternoon, and we went to Robert Young last. Well, I didn't hear a word he said. I had no idea what he said. Well, I got burned on that wine. So don't let that happen. When you see it, you got to buy it. You see it, you got to buy it. So
That's
my
true.
point. Because, right? Is that true, Kevin? Come on, you remember I got burned on that.
Want to do a wine
I
tasting?
remember that day.
Robert Young?
What's that? Did somebody ask a question? Oh, okay.
Hey, so what's the difference between the clone 17 and the 20 area 27?
So I can.
That's a Robbie question. Excellent.
Yeah.
It was hard one. Look at Robbie.
So the Clone 17 is strictly aged in French oak, the steep neck barrels, and the Area 27 is a combination of concrete and neutral French oak barrels. So it's one of those concrete eggs or vessels. If you've seen one of those, if you've been down our old tasting room, we used to have one right inside the door that led to the bathroom or the production facility out there. Area 27 is lighter style. Clone 17 has a little bit more body to it, a little bit more touch of oak. So the Area 27 would be like a little bit lighter than this clone. Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because I remember when you guys got those barrels, the egg, when you got the eggs. I remember when you first got it was pretty cool. Yeah, that was
Do both of the Chardonnays go through malolactic?
Yes, they do.
That would be something
Yeah,
to
both
talk about, Dad. You might
What's that?
tell your guests what malolactic fermentation is.
Oh, Robbie knows that. He's really good at that.
Scott.
It's the
We don't have the
secondary
right
fermentation.
glasses.
It's what creates the butter and the oak in a Chardonnay. And all of the Robert Young Chardonnays goes through a secondary fermentation. That's all that is.
Correct.
Is it stump time? Stump me?
So
Like
will,
this
will some of the
Malic
Chard-
acid to lactic acid. That's all you're doing.
Say that again, Kevin.
You're turning malic acid to lactic acid. You're turning an apple to butter on a secondary fermentation.
Right? Does anybody disagree with that? That's my boy.
That's the right answer.
Everything is better with butter.
So I'm
Everything's
looking
better with
around.
butter.
I'm seeing some red wine drinkers. Are you drinking Merlot?
Oh, you can do gallery.
Yeah.
Drinking the Merlot? Yes.
Yeah, we got a lot of Merlot
Yeah.
drinkers. It looks like that.
Does anybody have
It's an
a different wine of Robert Young that they're having because they already drank their Chardonnay allotment?
We're drinking the Scion.
Oh, you're so smart. You know, I have a little story on the Scion. You know, before I worked at Robert Young, my son and I collected for 15 years Scion. And we did a 10-year vertical. And
Nice.
we were having a party, and we decided that we were one vintage short. We didn't have the 97. And I went to the manager and I said, can you call some of your wine club members to see if they've got a 97? I'll buy it from them because I want to fill the 10-year vertical. And he goes, come with me. He takes me underground to the family's private cellar. Now, the family members are probably on right now, and they're going to be mad that I was there. Well, I was there. And we went through the whole cellar, and there was a 97. And I bought that bottle, and that filled that 10-year.
AR said it was probably his.
Yeah, it was good though. I can tell you that. And what really,
Very delicious.
when I opened that bottle, I was looking for signs of aging and so on. It told me that they bottled that wine and they laid it on the shelf and never touched it. All those years. And I just happened to be the lucky guy to get it. So I was pretty happy about that. But yeah, Scion, we're going to do Scion. We're going to do that next week. We're going to do the 2016 Alexander Valley Cab side by side to the 2015 Scion. So make sure you get those wines ready to go. That's gonna be pretty good.
You need to give me both those bottles so I can taste with you guys.
What's that? Say that again, Chris?
How long will the Chardonnays last? I mean, how long?
Well,
like-
normally you're shelving those for maybe 3 to 5 years, but you probably can put a little more time on that, and because it saw oak, and so that's going to help in the aging part of it. I wouldn't. I opened up oh gosh, Angie, help me. What year was that, Robert Young, that we opened up that older one? I want to say that was 2011. Or maybe it was 2010. It was absolutely beautiful, beautiful. And here's the key. I'd rather open the bottle early than too late, because you don't want to open it and go, oh God, well, man, last year that would have been great.
Wish I could have.
You want to get it early. I'd rather get it early. And if you're ever worried about opening up a wine and you don't know if you should be opening it right now, just call the winery. We've tasted back through a lot of these wines. We know exactly where they're at.
Perfect. I want to open up like 4 wines.
4 wines?
Can you do us a favor?
Yes.
Questions that are on your chat. There's some questions on your chat, and also
Yeah, what's on the
somebody
chat?
can just mute. They can mute their microphones when they're not talking, because we can't hear you as well.
Well, there's a lot of. Wow, it might be helpful for everybody to mute their mics. Well, that's true.
It'll help us hear you.
Well, it is about me.
What do you guys think of using a Coravin? Do you guys use Coravins?
Oh, absolutely.
Who wants to comment on that one? I hate the Corvin. I hate it. In the tasting room, I don't think it works because the cartridge is really too expensive.
$10 a piece.
Yeah, they're ridiculously expensive. It's the razor blade, right? We'll give away the razor, but the blades cost a fortune. Well, that's what Corbin is. But for private use, for you guys at home, it's pretty good because you're not ripping through. We open up too many bottles. We have way too many. You guys keep coming in and tasting all the wine, so we got to keep opening bottles. So I like it. I don't like it commercially at all.
Here's one thing with the Corvin. If you pierce your cork more than 5 times, you have to pull the cork. You will actually delete the cork and it will get air in there. So if you're going to go in and pull a couple ounces here and there, you got about 5 tries. After that, your cork and start drinking it. So the Corvin is really good to find out if you have older vintage, if they're ready to drink, or if you need to hold on to them. But the minute you pierce that cork, it will only last 6 to 8 months. They tell you it's going to be years and years later. It is 6 to 8 months the minute you pierce that cork.
Wait,
Use
what?
a Corvin. Be very, very cautious. I've used them for many years when they first came out on very old vintages, but the minute that thing pierces the cork, you do not have the time that they said where it's 2 years you can go back and drink it. You actually need to consume that wine within the next 6 months. So don't think you can Corvin it and set it away and come back to it. You actually already broke through. So
I'm a big believer of you got to open the bottle and let's get in the game. I mean, what the heck? I mean, at some point you got to pull the trigger on the damn thing. So I
you have to pull the trigger.
But to everybody else. So anybody got a tough? Or what do we have? Wait. What is it possible to buy library wines? For instance, I could purchase a 13 or 14 Bob's Burn Pile. Who's that person? I love that person. Of course you can. And we've tasted them. We have Bob's 14
and 13.
Now, Robbie, make sure that you're double checking. But
That would be me, Art Miller.
We do. We do, Art.
Yeah, and they're ridiculous. They're so beautiful. It's unbelievable. And you could probably lay those down, another 5 or 6 years. I mean, not in my house, but certainly.
Yeah.
My hope was to keep the 15 laid down that I just purchased about 2 weeks ago, and then try to open one of those 13s to really enjoy. So
Well, that 13 was monster. That's a big wine. Holy, you better get a steak this thick. You got to start out with some beef. No mushrooms on that one. Just get the
All right.
biggest steak you can get. But those wines are pouring really, really good. Really good.
No.
I have a question about the Merlots.
Go ahead, Karen.
And that is that I found as I looked for the 16, I have a 14 and a 15 as well. How do the 14 and 15, I didn't open them, how do the 14 and 15 compare to the 16?
On the Bob's Burn Pile?
No, on the Merlot. We're drinking.
On the Merlot. I think you're going to love all of those, and I think I would. I'd let the 15 sit for a while.
Okay.
Let it sit for a while. Oh, there you go. Show me the label. I can't.
Yeah,
see
we got Joanne. Show us what you got.
Oh, there you go. That's the Bob's Burn Pile.
Oh, that's a big one.
How long is this one? It's a 2010.
Ooh.
Oh, it's locked.
Let it go.
Nice. Gosh. Robbie,
Let it go.
when we opened that 10, it locked. It was
20.
really good. And then that's is that a 3 liter? Is that a
The
Magnum?
Magnum.
3 liter.
Oh,
God.
10 more years.
You can go till
10 more years.
It's a good game of show and tell.
10, 20 more years.
Yeah, 2030 would be prime time.
I can stand.
I didn't put it away.
When you open that, that's not a problem. What the hell? That one, I bet you, is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
When can we come over? What's the problem?
I'll bring
All you have
it.
to do is open it, put it in a glass, and leave the glass on your doorstep, and I'll come over and get it.
Or you can buy all of us. We'll go in and drink it.
Hang on, Scott. Can you answer Karen's question? Because I actually have the same question too. She was asking year over year, the 14, 15, 16 for the Merlot. I have the 15 open right now as well. So I was kind of curious about that versus the wine you're talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, those were magnificent years. All three of those were really, really great years. The 15, the yields were a little lower, and then the 16, the yields went way up. But we've been tasting them in the tasting room. They're pouring really, really nice. You have no issue with any of those right now. They're going to age really well. So in my book, I'm going to drink the older one first and then wait on the others and do them in that order. Or here's the cool thing you want to do. Once they let us all get back together again, you have a big dinner party, and you put 3 glasses at each setting, and you put 14, 15, and 16, but you don't tell the guests which is 14, 15, 16. You just tell them what the weather was like for 14, 15, and 16, because the grapes came from the same spot. The process is basically the same. And then you try to pick it out based on what the weather was like. So that's kind of a fun way to do that. That's what I would do. I would do
We'll have
that.
to order some more 16 then because we only had one and we just opened it for this.
Well, it's all right. We'll get you another one.
Did you mind?
Yeah, we get more. Don't you worry.
Not training, Robbie.
We'll
Yeah,
get you another one.
I got a couple. I have a couple in my cellar, so don't you worry. No.
If you want me to tell you about the vintages, 2014 was one of the best yields in California history. 2015 was the largest drought vintage, which means the highest stress, which means that wine is going to be bigger than the 14 and the 16 combined, which means it needs to lay down longer. But when 16 came through, we actually got enough rain that some winemakers thought 16 could be the best vintage since the 70s. So when you play with 14, 15, 16, remember they're 3 different monsters.
Right.
And as you lay them down, 15 is going to hold up longer than all of them, but it's going to take longer to become softer and smoother like you would see from 14 and 16 because of that weather type.
So what would you suggest as a length of time? When would be
well, 14, 15, and 16 shouldn't be drank for, I like my wines really old, but I would say another 10 years of all 3.
too late on the 16 for this?
Way too young. All of them are way too young. If you don't want to wait, drink them up. But I like my wines 20, 25 years old. But that's just because I worked at a winery that I drank wines that were 30 and 40 years old. And it was, when you see them get to that age, it's really amazing. But
Velvety, yeah.
I worked for Chateau Montelena for 5 years, and so I tried wines back to the 70s just recently, and they can hold up if it's aged properly. 14 and 16 are going to drink a little earlier, but 15, hold on to it. Don't let it sit down for a little bit longer. Let those tannins kind of calm down, and in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to come back going, should have got more 15s.
I guess
So.
we'll have to order some more of the 16 then.
Yeah, you gotta come back and get.
What about 13, Merlot?
13 was another drought vintage. So 12 was perfect. 13 was the start of the drought. 14 was a very elegant season. 15 was the monster drought. 16, we finally saw rain. That's where it became a perfect vintage. 10s and 11 were cold years. I can actually do this all the way back to the 70s if you want. I remember all the years. I've done a vertical for 40 years, a 40-year vertical, Cab and Chardonnay.
Kevin,
So
do you
I learned about every year.
Kevin, you're talking about the Merlot right now. Is that the same with the cabs?
Cabs have more tannin structure, so they're going to typically last longer. So Merlot typically has a softer tannin structure. It does have a higher acid base, but if you get back to some of the French Merlots, the East Banks, they can last 30, 40 years. So as long as you have acid, tannin.
Your audio went dead.
Audio.
Technical
okay.
difficulties.
So
we got a question from Deb, and it's about smoke taint. It says, have you experienced any smoke taint over the last couple of years? We have not, unfortunately. So we just had a fire back in October, and then back in 2017 as well. And thankfully, this last October we had 97 or 98% of our crop in. So thankfully, we didn't have any smoke taint issues. And the crop that was left on the vine, we just left it there. We didn't want to harvest it, so it would make a bad wine and it would hurt our brand. So for our wines, fortunately, you're not going to have any smoke taint whatsoever, which is great.
Robbie,
So,
how do you guys
on that as well, Robbie, when the fires ended and we came back to work, I grabbed a cluster of that was right down by the tasting room, and I tasted the berry, and it was delicious, and it was really luscious. But at the very end, a little smoke, man, that just ruined it. And you knew you could never make wine with that, never, not in a million. I don't care what you do.
I think, Joanne, question?
Yeah, how did you guys fare with the fire? Did you get damage? I know it came very close to that.
Yeah, it was, we have like 450 acres, and it burnt through about 150 of it. And that was solely pasture land. So just grassland. We thankfully didn't have any houses that burned or any of our buildings. We had a whole bunch of equipment like on our outskirts up in the hills. And then, a lot of like tree damage from trees falling in on the buildings and whatnot. But, all things considered, I think it was best case scenario. It could have been 100 times worse, no doubt.
Well, that's the truth.
Yeah. So yeah, we're very, very fortunate.
Yeah, you'd be in a trailer right now talking to us.
Yeah. And I'm going to kind of go up the group chat here. I have a question specifically for Scott, which is in reference of your map that's back behind you.
Oh, behind me.
Yeah, from Laura.
Yeah, well, for the last 10 years, I had my own tasting room, and I acquired small production wines. And last year, I decided to downsize, and so I closed it. But those are my wine club members that I have all over the country. And each one of those are little dots of little people that I get wine to. And the cool thing is, I've incorporated Robert Young's wines in there because I love their wine, and because I only do small production, I don't deal with big, grocery store wine. I don't bother with that. And so those are all my customers that I sell. So, but I sent them really great wine. You know what I sent them was the Big Rock Block. That they loved that wine, and then the Malbec. I just sent the Malbec, what you guys got, and yeah, I know the good stuff when I see it. So I met Robert Young for a reason, because the good Lord knew that I need to get back in there, you know, and. It was the right timing for me, which was so interesting, and yeah, I'm enjoying being with Robbie and Mackenzie and Lindsay and all the family members, and then you guys that come in to the tasting room. I love that, and then I get to leave it for them, and I go home. That's great.
Hey, Scott, was that Cellars of Sonoma?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Cellars of Sonoma. That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Serena.
Oh, yeah. Well, you just saw that. It was Heidi Barrett's wine.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had some rock star stuff, I'm telling you. Because you know what we did? I'm really particular about the wine. We tasted a panel. And if we don't like everything they make, we don't take them. So I ticked off a bunch of wineries, but some of them were rock stars. Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of fun. We did it for 10 years. That was, you know. But
All right, let's open it up. Anybody else, if they got any other questions, future tastings, or about the wines?
Want some new ones?
Hey, that Merlot is just opening up right now. It's fantastic.
What did you open up?
That Merlot is opening up right now. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites right now, I'd say. Some very light. You can just drink it by itself on a good movie on the porch. However, you don't necessarily have to have it with food.
It's perfect. It's like smooth, you know. I love it.
It's soft.
It's our general manager's favorite as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I just like the fact that it's in my glass. You don't have to give me a reason to drink this wine. Not at all. I mean, Kevin and I and our boys, we've been fans for, 15 years at least. At least. And, you know, many of you that are watching today, you probably have been, fans of Robert Young for years. And the only reason is, and it's not just Robbie, like big deal, but no, it's consistency in the wine. You know, it's consistent all the way through, and that's the truth. I don't make that up. That's the real deal. And yeah, and Robbie's good too. We like Robbie. God bless.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah. We have a lot of fun, and we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back strong. So, stay true, stay home. If you're local and you need wine, Robbie will deliver it. If you're out of the area,
Complimentary as well.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, complimentary. That's good.
Yeah. And order what you need, and we'll take care of it. You've got it. And then the people outside the area just order, think in 6s and 12s, get a full box. Because I think you got a special, John, or what's your name? Robbie? Is your name Robbie? Where's that Robbie guy?
That's my name.
Yeah. So a case of wine, you got a price on a case of wine. Are you doing something on shipping?
Can I ask them that?
On a case, we do $20 flat rate shipping on a case.
Yeah.
If you inquire to us to our Lindsay here, which I have on our previous slide. If you guys are interested in any of that Big Rock Block or that Cabernet at the bottom,
Going way fast.
those will be your best
Next week they're going to have
best contact if you want to take that down, or just give us a phone call on our direct line on our website, which most of you have. And
Spelled wrong. My name.
oh, apologies, Lindsay, as it's spelled.
Did you spell her name wrong?
Yep.
There's a last minute entry there, Scott. This wouldn't be enjoyable without a little bit of
Now
humor.
you guys know why I work in the tasting room, because I get to work with him, and he cracks me up every day. It's unbelievable. He just makes stuff up. It's unreal.
Give us a call. We'll take care of you. I promise.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't go wrong. Now, while I'm on the subject, next week we're going to do this again, but we're tasting the Alexander Valley Cab, the 2016, and the 2015 Scion. So those of you that are stashing your Scion, bring it out. It's time to
our
have a little
winemaker.
taste. And Matt, our winemaker, Matt, he's going to be in. Is he on this call? Are you guys? Did anybody see him?
He will be next week.
Okay, so next week he'll be on, and we'll let Robbie come on. Can we have Robbie come in too?
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, because we like him. I mean, he's okay. Well, you can clean the windows, right? Isn't that why you're in there? Yeah, he'll do that. That's good. Okay. Yeah. So that's next week, but the week after we're doing something really cool, and the week after we're going to do the 19 Rosé and the 2017 Cabernet Franc. Kevin, stay away from the Cabernet Franc. Oh, yeah. Yeah, don't get anywhere near. How many barrels did you make of that, Robbie? Do you know what the production is on the Cab Franc? It's like, what is it, like 3? Or 4?
Something
It's
small.
really
Maybe, I think it's maybe 6, but because that's a big seller for us. So,
for
it
those
goes
who
that one.
don't
That is the
understand,
best
that's
selling
not a lot
wine
of
we
wine.
produce, no doubt.
That's not a lot of wine.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
So-
Super cool. So
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for joining us. I'm very pleased with the amount of folks we got here. If you take a look here at our upcoming tastings on the screen, so the next 2 following Wednesdays, we have one. Next one is next Wednesday, April 15th, with our incredible host, Scott, again, and then also Matt Michael, our winemaker, and he'll be able to talk for hours about the wine, any questions you have. And that'll be our 16 AV Cab, lighter style, and then our 15 Scion, which is our flagship, which everybody's familiar with.
gosh, I hate those wines, Robbie.
I know. 2 of our worst wines tomorrow. So, I mean, next Wednesday.
The very worst wine you ever had.
No. Yeah, and then we have some 19 Rosé, April 22nd in the Cab Franc. The Rosé.
Cab Franc, baby.
Rosé is out now, so you can certainly order some of that. Very limited, so I'll probably go fast. And then our Cabernet Franc as well. That'll be in the April shipment if you opted in for some of that. All right.
And then someday you guys will be able to come back to the tasting room. Thank the Lord for that. Jeez.
Hopefully.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll have a big party. We're going to have a big party. There's no question about it. That's coming. But hang in there, everybody. Do the right thing. Wash your hands a bunch. Wash your face. Wash your car, your clothes, everything.
Stay home. Stay home.
Stay home, yeah.
Stay home and stay 6 feet.
Stay home and keep drinking.
Right.
And we'll keep delivering. We'll deliver.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. All
All right. We love you guys.
right, bye, everybody. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye for now.
See ya. Thanks.
Bummer. 15th and the 22nd.
Yeah.